Okay, so welcome to the deep dive, and today we are diving headfirst right into this whole roller coaster ride that's been Fortnite.
Yeah,
This video game that everybody knows Fortnite, right?
absolutely.
It's like a cultural phenomenon at this point.
Yeah.
And we've got this analysis
Yeah,
that
okay.
we're looking at today called "The Rise and Fall of Fortnite: Why It Almost Died Overnight."
Very dramatic title.
And it is. It really lays it all out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, and I think what's so fascinating about it too is, it really does kind of give you that whole journey.
Yeah.
The game's journey from its explosive start to what seemed like an unshakable peak, and then, kind of the slide down that had everyone talking about its demise.
Right.
And now the question is, could it actually come back?
Exactly. So, like, your mission today, if you choose to accept it, is to really come away from this understanding like what fueled that initial rocket ship of popularity. What were the things that caused it to maybe wobble a little bit along the way? And,
Yeah.
are those whispers of the end actually premature? Like, could it actually come back? So it's almost like a rapid fire education
Yeah,
in this volatile world of online gaming.
exactly.
So let's jump in. Let's go all the way back
Yeah.
to the beginning
Okay.
to what the analysis calls the golden age. So we're talking, back in 2017 when this thing launched.
The 2017 launch, it wasn't just another game drop.
Yeah.
It hit the cultural sweet spot.
It did. It really did. It was instant. Like,
That was huge.
it was everywhere.
Yeah, it was everywhere.
So, and it wasn't just about, being the last one standing. I mean, that's the core of Battle Royale, right?
Right.
But there were those building mechanics,
Yeah.
the way that you could, like, instantly throw up cover or gain high ground. That was
Revolutionary.
revolutionary.
Mhm.
And what do you think it was about that
Yeah.
that really just clicked with players?
I mean-
I think it added a layer of strategic depth that
Yeah.
most shooters simply didn't have at the time. It wasn't just about twitch reflexes anymore. It was about spatial awareness and creative problem solving.
Right.
Like on the fly. And of course, who could forget the floss dance?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that became a global phenomenon.
It did.
Transcended the game itself.
It really did. Yeah. Those were immediate, cultural touchdowns.
Mhm.
But here's something that I thought was so interesting that the analysis points out. It's that introduction of Kevin the Cube.
Give me the cube, right?
It wasn't just like some random object, floating around. They described it as a, quote, sentient, reality-warping entity
Yeah.
tied directly into the game's evolving storyline.
It's true. A sentient cube.
A sentient
In a
cube.
battle royale game. I
Yeah.
mean, who saw that coming?
Nobody. It's crazy.
Yeah, I was like, but that's what
It was brilliant, though.
I know. It was like
It was brilliant.
so absurd. It was brilliant.
That's kind of what made it
Yeah.
so captivating, though, right?
Absolutely. It hinted at this narrative depth
Yeah.
that you just did not expect from this kind of game. And that, Kevin was just the beginning.
Right.
I mean, then you had the Seven, this shadowy group of characters, the 0 point,
Yeah.
the very nexus of realities
It's
within the game.
wild how.
It built this surprisingly intricate lore
Yes.
beneath the surface of what you would expect.
Yeah. And what was so clever, as the analysis points out,
Right.
is how they wove this complex narrative into a game that at its heart was still about that core
Yeah,
battle royale competition.
right.
So, it wasn't just about, the story, or it wasn't just about the competition. They were bringing it all together
It brought it all together.
in these amazing ways. Like, for example, the live events.
Yeah.
The one where a black hole, swallowed the entire map.
Yeah.
What was the reaction like to that?
Unprecedented. I mean, for days,
Yeah.
the game was literally gone.
Gone. Just a black hole
Just a black hole on the screen.
on the screen. And the internet, of course, exploded
Oh, yeah.
with theories and speculation. It was genius
Genius.
in terms of building anticipation,
Yeah.
fostering a sense of shared experience
Mhm.
within the community.
Yeah. It wasn't just an update. It was like a world-ending event.
Yeah, like a world-ending event that everybody experienced together.
Yeah. So connecting this back to, you listening to this right now.
Right.
This early period wasn't just about fun gameplay.
Mm.
It was about a constantly unfolding story
Yeah.
and these unique shared moments
Yeah,
that built a dedicated fan base unlike anything we'd ever seen.
absolutely. And this set the stage for what the analysis calls the peak, roughly from like 2020 to 2022.
Okay.
But Fortnite just seemed unstoppable.
It was unstoppable, yeah.
Oh.
So this continued success during this period,
It was definitely,
hosted by those massive collaborations.
much along by those massive collaborations.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking, Chapter 2, Season 4, the Marvel crossover, bringing in, I mean, these are iconic characters, Iron Man, Thor.
Yeah. Huge moment.
Huge.
Yeah.
How did those kinds of crossovers play out in the game? Like, what was the actual integration like?
Well, they weren't just cosmetic skins, which
Yeah.
is what made them so impactful. You had these limited time modes where you could use the Marvel superheroes' abilities,
Right.
storylines that tied into the Marvel universe, challenges, rewards, all directly linked to the crossover.
It was really well done.
It broadened the game's appeal so much.
Yeah. I mean, way beyond the core audience.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, we have to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Generated like a lot of revenue.
Oh, absolutely. It was a very smart business move.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we saw similar integrations with Travis Scott, Star Wars, even Master Chief from Halo.
It was really interesting to see how they did that.
Yeah. But, the analysis does kind of pinpoint a potential turning point during this peak.
Okay.
And it suggests that the increasing complexity of the lore, while initially a strength,
Right.
maybe started to become a hurdle for new players.
So wait, so what you're saying is something that was good in the beginning might have actually become a liability.
It might have become a liability later on, yeah. Because imagine, like, you're just picking up the game,
Right.
You're hearing about chromed 7 members and some evil goo rewriting the history of a character called the Foundation. I mean, that's
a lot
to take in, and it could feel overwhelming to try and catch up.
It's almost like you're trying to jump into a TV show and it's like
10th
season. You've just missed so much backstory.
Yeah, exactly.
That it's like, where do you even begin?
Right.
So, and then on top of that, there's the core gameplay itself.
Right.
So even with all the new seasons and updates and all this stuff, the fundamental loop started to feel a little like repetitive. You know what I mean?
It did, yeah. I mean, you have those 22-minute matches, same basic mechanics.
Right.
What do you think contributed to that gameplay loop fatigue that the analysis mentions?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because unlike some other, long-running online games that introduce entirely new gameplay systems or deep progression paths over time, Fortnite's core really remained largely the same.
It really did, yeah.
So while visual updates and map changes,
right.
Provided some variety, the fundamental act of dropping in, looting, building, fighting down to the last player.
It didn't really evolve.
It didn't really evolve dramatically.
Yeah.
Even a beloved character like Peely.
Right.
With all of his different variations, like
Silverine, all the different Peely.
Silverine, all the different Peely versions might have,
Suffered from overexposure. Yeah.
It raises the question, how much can visual novelty mask underlying, like, mechanical repetition in the long run?
Yeah. It's a tough balancing act.
It is. You got to keep things fresh. But you also don't want to alienate your core players who love what the game is at its heart. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this leads us to the period the analysis calls cracks in the foundation.
Okay.
Around 2023, 2024.
Yeah.
This is where, things really start to, the narrative of decline really starts to gain traction.
Yeah. And the analysis suggests that a contributing factor here was the introduction of too many new elements in Chapter 5.
Okay.
So suddenly you've got all these new factions, like the Underground, the Society, Doom's Kingdom, and a whole new cast of characters. Hope, Jones, Pandora's Box. It sounds like,
It's like they were throwing everything at the wall.
At a lot of players very quickly.
Yeah. Like trying to recapture that initial excitement.
Right.
But maybe just ending up feeling cluttered. And confusing.
Confusing.
Yeah, for new and returning players. And then, the map changes, which were such a big deal.
They were huge in the beginning.
Early on. They really kept things feeling dynamic. Fresh.
Yeah.
They started to feel less impactful,
Less impactful. The contrast the analysis draws is really telling.
Yeah.
Early on, we saw entire regions of the map transform between seasons.
Yeah.
But then later on, the changes were more incremental.
Yeah.
You know, a few new trees here, some recycled portals they called sideways rifts there. I mean,
Sure.
that's not...
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
Yeah. So, for you listening,
Right.
think about how crucial a constantly evolving world is to keeping a live service game.
Yes.
Feeling fresh.
Yeah.
And engaging.
And alive.
Yeah. Alive, yeah. And then, I mean, on top of all this, the narrative threads that had kept players so invested, the mysteries surrounding the 7, the 0 point, they also seem to be kind of like fraying a little bit,
They did, yeah.
The analysis points out the fate of key lore figures.
Yeah.
Like the scientist being chromed, which refers to a storyline where characters were transformed by this mysterious substance.
Right.
And the Magin being deceased.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you start losing these characters that people have followed for years and years, I mean, how does that impact your investment in the ongoing story?
Oh, absolutely. It has a huge impact, I think.
Yeah.
Narrative stakes matter. You know, if the characters that players have an emotional connection to are sidelined or killed off without a satisfying resolution, it can definitely lead to a sense of disillusionment, to disengagement.
Like, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and this brings us to what the analysis calls the final nail, ominously.
Oh, the final nail.
In the coffin around, like, 2024, 2025.
Okay.
This is where things really seem to take a turn for the worse.
It's where it all went wrong, according to the analysis.
According to the analysis, yeah.
Yeah.
So the Pantheon update, with the introduction of Zeus and Hades, was hyped up.
Oh, it was so hyped.
So much.
Yeah.
But the player reaction was largely negative.
Yeah.
Why do you think that was?
Well, the analysis suggests that the battle pass associated with this update was perceived as like just reskinned mythology gear.
Okay.
So players weren't seeing new, exciting content. They felt like they were just getting variations of things they already had.
Like reskinned?
Reskinned, yeah. Fortnight, God of Boredom.
Yeah, the nickname started circulating.
God of Boredom. That
says it all, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
It's brutal.
It's brutal.
Yeah, and then, of course, the live event. Right. Or should we say?
Or the lack thereof.
The lack thereof.
Yeah.
So instead of the grand map-altering spectacles that they had become known for, players reportedly got.
A 10-minute cutscene of Jonesy eating a sandwich?
Yeah. Seriously.
Seriously.
I mean, what
kind of message is that sending?
Yeah. What kind of message are you sending to the player base when you do something like that?
Yeah. And the analysis says that the player reaction was overwhelmingly negative, understandably. Reportedly, the chat just, like, spammed F.
Yeah.
Which, of course, in internet culture often signifies both respect for something lost.
Right.
And in this context, likely a huge dose of frustration.
Frustration, disappointment.
And disappointment.
Yeah.
It was just a massive letdown.
It was a huge letdown.
Compared to what they had done before.
Yeah. I mean, you could see how that would just completely deflate any, like,
the hype, the momentum.
The hype, the momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
And the analysis suggests this was a real tipping point, leading to, like, a pretty significant exodus of players and streamers.
Yeah.
Like big names like Ninja reportedly moved on to other games like
Pal World 2 and things like that.
Pal World 2, yeah. There was just this general sense that the loop, that core gameplay cycle, had just run its course.
Yeah, so...
For many.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the departure of those popular streamers can be a really significant indicator of a game's
perceived health.
Yeah, perceived health.
When those influential figures in the community move on, it signals to their audience that the must-play experience has moved elsewhere.
Exactly. So with all of this talk of decline, that's all been laid out. The big question is, did Fortnite really die?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right?
It is. It really is. And the analysis itself actually raises this.
It does.
It points out that the game is still being updated.
It is.
There are, mentions of returning characters, ongoing city lines.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't sound like a game.
Doesn't sound like a completely flatlined game.
No, not at all.
And the analysis actually draws a really interesting parallel to Apex Legends.
Okay.
Remember, like, there was a period where a lot of people felt that game was losing its way.
Right.
But then it saw this huge revival, particularly with the introduction of the Revenant Reborn storyline.
Right.
Fortnite, with its just massive financial resources.
I mean, they've got the money.
Could certainly
They could do whatever they want.
Engineer a comeback.
They really could. So, okay, so what could that revival actually look like?
Right.
I mean, the analysis kind of throws out a couple
Interesting possibilities. First, a story reset.
Okay.
So basically, simplifying that increasingly complex lore.
Right.
You know, maybe going back to a more accessible narrative.
Yeah.
Less Chrome, more Kevin, as the analysis humorously puts it.
Less Chrome, more Kevin. I love that.
So what would be the benefit of, like, going with that approach?
Well, I think stripping things back to a more straightforward narrative could make the game so much more welcoming to new players who might have been intimidated by, like, years of accumulated backstory.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And it's a lot. And it could also, like, reignite the nostalgia of long-term players who remember those earlier, simpler storylines.
Simpler times, yeah.
Yeah.
And the second potential path to revival hinges on something that we see time and time again in gaming: nostalgia.
Nostalgia.
So the analysis mentions the, like, strong potential appeal of bringing back the OG map, that original layout of the game world.
That's what the people want.
And the enduring fan demand for, like, iconic locations like Tilted Towers.
Tilted Towers, yeah.
Why do you think that old map holds such a strong pull for people?
Nostalgia is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful emotional driver for players who invested countless hours on that original map.
Right.
You know, returning to those familiar landscapes can evoke really strong, positive memories and a desire to relive those early beloved experiences. It's a strategy that's worked for a lot of games.
It really has.
To bring players back.
So, to bring it all together for you, the central question isn't definitively whether Fortnite died.
Right.
But rather whether it's currently in a state of, like,
dormancy,
waiting for the right catalyst to, like, spark a genuine revival.
The right spark.
Yeah. So could it be a significant story shift? Could it be a nostalgic return to its roots?
It could be.
I mean, who knows?
Only time will tell.
Only time will tell.
That seems to be the crux of the matter.
Yeah, it really does. And regardless of its current status, the analysis makes one thing absolutely clear. Fortnite has left.
It's left a mark.
An undeniable mark on the gaming landscape. I mean,
absolutely.
Its innovative gameplay mechanics, groundbreaking live events, its sheer cultural impact.
Huge.
I mean, these are all things that are not going to be forgotten anytime soon.
They're not going anywhere.
No. It's a fascinating case study in the life cycle of online games. It really makes you think about, you know, that balance between innovation and familiarity.
Right.
The role of community sentiment, and ultimately what elements are, like, essential for a sustained and engaging online experience.
Right.
So what do you think, as you've listened to this deep dive, what are those non-negotiable ingredients for a game to not just, you know,
thrive in the short term, but to actually endure?
Endure over time.
Over time. That is the question.
That's a thought worth holding on to.
Yeah.
Thanks for exploring this with us on The Deep Dive.
Absolutely.
We'll see you next time.